Welcome to the Confident Retirement Podcast. How confident are you when it comes to life's biggest money decisions? What is real financial peace and how can you get it? Chris Flaming and Mark Peachy are the founders of LPF Advisors in Sarasota, Florida. They bring together the brightest minds to show you how to have a more confident financial future. They empower listeners with common sense concepts and financial wisdom. And now, here are your hosts, LPF Advisors. Okay, I want to welcome everybody to the Confident Retirement Podcast brought to you by LPF Advisors. I'm your host here as always, Chris Flaming. And for disclosure purposes, the information and opinions shared are not necessarily that of my firm or this platform. I am only providing general education information and not any customized investment recommendations. As always, you should consult with your own professionals, whether those are financial advisors, tax advisors, or attorneys on your specific situation. Nothing that we discuss here shall be construed as financial, tax, or legal advice or recommendations. That's a mouthful. So today I have the pleasure of welcoming Jeremy Schilling to the show. He is a Florida-based civil litigator focusing on first-party property insurance and personal injury cases. He dedicates his practice to helping the injured and homeowners obtain the benefits to which they are entitled. Jeremy, thanks for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah, going to be a good time. So you have kind of an interesting history. I was researching you online of how you came to be where you are now. So maybe just take me through that briefly on that journey.
Yeah, I was in law school at the time and I was out of money and the economy had just taken a dive. And so I went to every restaurant where I was living at the time and there's just no jobs available. I offered to bus tables. No one would offer me a job. So I went and applied and worked for an insurance company and, off and on and did various roles, but learned from the inside, how an insurance company works. Clerked at a big firm, realized that was not for me. Went and worked for a small private attorney where we represented a number of carriers over about 6 or 7 years. And then I flipped to the consumer side and worked for a friend of mine for 2 or 3 years. And then it just got to the point where, I felt strongly about what I was doing and helping people, and I wanted to do it on my own. And I had a really good friend that sees the world very similar to the way I do. And we went and started my practice. We're based in Fort Lauderdale, but we help people all over the state of Florida. And I often say that we are a consumer advocacy group, titled a law firm, but I believe strongly, and the people that work with me believe strongly in helping people that need help. Most people without the background can't just show up and fight an insurance company, whether it be an insurance company behind a car accident or an insurance company behind a flood or a hurricane or a water claim. So, feel strongly about what we do. And I can sit here and tell you that over 12 years of practice, I really feel like I've helped a lot of people.
Good. And I'm going to ask you a little bit later about how that background working on the one side helps with what you do now. So is there anything now that you wish you knew when you started out? Maybe you could go back in time and give the younger you some advice.
So much. I assume we're limiting this to the practice of law.
Well, it's your episode. So yeah, whatever you think is important and pertinent.
Tom Brady said when he was like 42 or 43, why would I retire now? Now I know everything. And now, right. He was playing with longevity versus how intelligent he was as a football mind. I think anybody that really takes whatever their specialty is, whether it's law or, anything, as you get older, you learn from the perspectives, especially of past failures and mistakes. And so, I was fortunate enough to get my start on the insurance company side of things because it was tremendous value. It still is today. I still pull on those moments. So I would say, of course, and failures of yesterday are going to help me tomorrow and into the future. And that's, I think any professional would see it that way.
Mm-hmm. So then kind of along those lines, I know that you clerked for a while for another law firm. So is that how you came to choose the area of law that you primarily focus on? Was it because of clerking in that industry? Or was it some experience you had or know somebody who went through something?
No, the clerk for the big firm, I don't want to say it taught me nothing. It taught me how to build an insurance company. Okay. Which is important for that business model. But making the decision to go work for the insurance company really set the stage. Obviously, I didn't know at the time. But once I worked for an insurance company, I became marketable to other firms that wanted to represent insurance companies. So, I'm from Massachusetts originally, son of an attorney. So, and I spoke with the then Massachusetts bar, and he said, look, there's no market. And I'm sitting here with already job offers from defense firms that represent insurance companies, and the decision was made for me. Mm-hmm. So, then I'm representing a number of carriers, and we were a small firm, so we could avoid certain conflicts. So I started to take on some consumer-oriented work. Mm-hmm. And so I was doing both. And that is what made me believe that the right side is helping people.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, I mean, you've touched on this a little bit, but if you were going to say this is the biggest benefit of that past experience when you were on the one side and now you're helping individual clients, what's the biggest thing that you gleaned from that when you were on the other side that helps you to represent people today?
The insurance company's business model.
Okay.
And how it's applied to prevent consumers from obtaining fair resolutions.
Okay.
And being able to explain to a client, this is what's going to happen to you in the next 6 months. And for then it to come true. And when you tell someone this is what's going to happen today, and then it happens, it does a number of things. Starting with building trust that you're there to help them and that you know what you're doing and that you're going to get them to the finish line when there's difficult points where they got to stand up and fight. Mm-hmm. That is the biggest benefit of my background.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Setting expectations, here's how it's going to look. When you make those assertions or those statements and then the person sees that's what's happening, I can see where that'd be a huge credibility builder.
That's the way I like to think it works, Chris.
Okay. So do you think there's some misconceptions that people have about what you do or what you can accomplish for them? Maybe touch on a couple of those.
Yeah, well, starting with being an attorney, there's an automatic stereotype and stigma that we're scumbags and we're out for money and we're thinking about ourselves first. And it's something I fight hard against. Mm. My father, like I said, is an attorney. My sister's an attorney, and watching my father actually care shaped, I think, the attorney that I am because I care tremendously. And it's not always about the almighty dollar. It just can't be if you're well balanced, in my opinion. Mm. And if you're doing it right, the money will come. So that's number one. Number two is in Florida specifically, there's been some issues with some people doing the things the wrong way. Mm. And, it's been difficult to, distance yourself when you're a first party or a personal injury attorney in the state of Florida. Now more recently, there's been some information coming out the other way that pushes back. But as long as you're doing things the right way, I think you can rise above some of those issues. Okay.
And I know you don't necessarily have like an ideal client, but is there a mindset of a client that you enjoy working with or that is really geared towards the type of work that you do? So I don't mean like from a monetary standpoint. I just mean when they come to you, there's an ideal you have in setting expectations and them wanting to rely on you for advice. So maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, the money doesn't matter. The client, sometimes I'm discussing subjective factors and evaluating this possible settlement offer. And I always tell my clients the exact same thing. One of your subjective factors is your disposable income, money saved away, family support. And I always say it with a disclaimer before I go into it. I'm not asking about your financial situation. It's not relevant to me. Mm-hmm. It's relevant to the client in accepting or rejecting or countering and moving forward with a settlement offer. But the financial side of it's irrelevant to me. I'm helping people. You're the first person to ask me what's the ideal client. And I would say the ideal client is someone that has independent thought, can evaluate their situation, and can take the information I'm providing them and trust it. And it's based on their background, training, and education, whether it be in a different field or wherever they're coming from. I don't ever want a client that's on the opposite end one way or the other, one that just won't listen to me or one that only listens to me. Mm-hmm. The money is specifically, and a lot of people don't know this, but the money is the client's responsibility. I can give you advice, but I've never specifically rejected a settlement offer. It's the client, that makes that decision. And if you have somebody that only listens to you, like, whatever you think, well, I can't just make the decision for you. You control the money. And then, the other way is they're not even listening to the words that come out of my mouth, and they're operating on their own compass, and that can be a problem. So somebody in the middle, obviously, is, who we want to work with. And To be honest with you, I've helped so many different types of people and different demographics, different families, different everything. And the success comes from making sure they get back to where they need to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, restored. They're the best that they can be. Okay. So then when someone's seeking out the right advocate for them, what are some things that you think that they should consider? I mean, I don't know in cases of like insurance claims or personal injury, if people interview, 4 personal injury attorneys before they pick someone. I don't know if that's a common thing, but what do you think that they should be considering when they're looking for an advocate for their case?
Well, not to be constantly middling you, Chris, it's dependent on the client. Some clients want the biggest law firm. They don't care who they're assigned to within that business structure. Mm-hmm. Others want a boutique firm, someone that's available 100% of the time. For me, I'd want competency, availability, someone that's going to answer their phone. They have a staff that's there if they're not, can answer the questions, can get the attorney scheduled to speak with the client if they're not immediately available. It's changed since COVID, but I personally would want to go to my attorney's office and meet him or her and speak to them and shake their hand and see how they present and how their demeanor is, because that's the demeanor you're going to see in the courtroom, which is ultimately, if you can't resolve a claim, where you're going to win or lose. So for me, that's always been super, super important.
Okay. And that brings up, while you were talking there, I thought of another question. So what can people expect when they work with you, with your firm, with your process? So let's say someone does want a boutique experience, right? A lot of people don't necessarily know what that means. Maybe touch on that on a high level, and that might help explain kind of what the process is when you work with people.
Yeah, a boutique law firm is just a small law firm. The owners, it may just be the owners, it may be a couple under. I believe we're right on the edge of a boutique law firm. You want to be the type of attorney that can return phone calls and be in your client's ear when they need you. And that starts with the attorney, but it's important to have support staff that understands that's what the attorney wants. And I'm very fortunate because my longtime legal assistant is the best. And, if I am in the courtroom or I am doing a podcast and I miss a call, I'm provided with the information to make sure that I can return it as fast as possible. Yeah.
Those people are invaluable. We have some employees like that too. I'm right there with you. Okay. So are there some common fears and concerns that you encounter when you're working with people? I mean, I can imagine they come in and they say, I just want this to be the result, or I'm okay as long as this doesn't happen. So are there some common ones that you run into?
Yeah. The first is, if I lose, do I have to pay for my attorney? If I lose, do I have to pay for the defendant's attorney? And that's obviously case specific. Sometimes, and I've already touched on this, the feeling that the attorney is going to determine what the settlement is. And obviously I dispel the clients of that immediately. I would say those are the big ones.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I run into things where I go through recommendations for a client and, we can go a couple different directions, and then do you have any questions? And they inevitably go, well, what would you do? Right.
Well, that happens to me every single day.
Right.
And I always say the same thing. And I also touched on this earlier. It's not objective factors. Yeah. Not everyone has the same factors, so they're subjective. So if somebody's offering you 50 cents on the dollar, the factors are, you can get that money now. You're not going to have enough money. So then what are the other factors? Do you have disposable income you can include to get your property fixed or pay your medical bills? And so, some people have spouses that exert a tremendous influence on them, rightfully so, or kids, young kids. So if you have property damage, for example, you want to get your property fixed. Maybe you are willing to take a little bit less to have your kids in a home that's operating as it is expected to. And I can go on, but that's the nature of it.
Okay. So how do you ensure, or how do you kind of act to ensure that clients feel supported and informed throughout their situation when they work with you? Because it can be stressful, right? It can be like a roller coaster. So how do you help or address that?
I do the intakes. And so I'm the first person they talk to. and I'll explain, and I give them the time. If they have a questions for 40 minutes, then I'm in a 40-minute phone call and I'm answering their questions. Being available, like I mentioned, when they do have a question or it's something's happening in their personal life and, it's making them think about other problems they're facing. And I want to talk to my attorney now about what's going on. To be able to take or return that phone call in a timely manner is extremely important.
Yeah. They want to feel heard and listened to.
They want to know that their case is moving and that, they understand we're not discussing settlement, but there's deposition scheduled, there's hearings scheduled, the case is moving forward. And sometimes that's all they want to hear. Other times they want the detail. Obviously, it depends on the specific client.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to switch gears a little bit to the property insurance, the Florida insurance market. So I'm just curious, where are you seeing the most activity or the biggest, not biggest from a dollar amount, but the highest number of cases that you're dealing with? What kind of themes are you seeing with those that you're working with clients?
Yeah, the biggest problem we're facing still currently is unresolved hurricane claims from the preceding 12 to 15 months, especially in higher dollar homes that the insurance company has to pay more money and they don't want to do that. So, that's the biggest thing we're still facing right now on the property side of things. But people come to us all the time with all different sorts of property issues because they happen unexpectedly and they're not the fault of the homeowner. They're just pipe goes, there's a random hailstorm,
Yeah.
And you deal with what comes with that.
And you hear these rumors or you hear it said, do these insurance companies have dedicated teams I'm not saying it's their goal in life to not pay the claims, but do they have dedicated teams that deal with these types of cases specifically? They have their own legal teams on staff, or are they outsourcing that to a firm that represents insurance companies?
Depends on the insurance company, Chris.
Okay.
Some are going towards the full. When I first started, the far majority of insurance companies were hiring outside counsel. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say it's completely flipped, but some of the bigger insurance companies have in-house counsel. Some cases they may determine that go out, and do a little bit of both. But there's a lot of insurance professionals, lawyers, either working for or representing insurance companies. And, it really is, it's insurance company specific.
Okay. And the life of a case when it comes to insurance claims, is that typically longer, shorter, about the same as a personal injury? I know it's case specific, but what are you seeing as the trend?
So with personal injury, you have to treat, right? You have an injury, but they come to you. I've had this bad thing happen to me and I'm still finding out what's going on with my body. And so they've got to get to the professionals to find out. They may improve in a week. They may need surgery. And so sometimes you have to wait for the treatment to kind of run its course with personal injury. With property, once you shut off the water, once the storm dissipates, the damage is done.
Yeah.
So it's different right from the outset. Now, the length of the case is dependent on a number of factors: client expectation, insurance company's desire to resolve that particular claim, value of the property. If you have a house on the beach with ornate internal fixtures that have been damaged, it's smaller claims get settled quickly. That's just the nature of it.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. Let's be case specific. All right. So I'm curious, I'm switching gears again. I appreciate it. Going forward, maybe what you consider to be biggest opportunity for your firm, looking at the future goals of the business.
Well, doing things the right way and continuing to help people that need it. And, with that comes making money, which I'm not going to lie to you is obviously a factor for everybody.
Sure.
But if you're doing things the right way and you're helping people, then the rest will come. And, I think our internal mission statement mirrors that, and that's what we're focused on.
And what is that mission statement? Not to put you on the spot.
No, I haven't memorized it. It's probably on our website. It just mirrors the idea that if you do things the right way and you're helping people, again, I go back to the initial comment that we're a consumer advocacy group titled a law firm. We're helping people, and it's important to us.
Yeah. Yeah, you care.
You get to know clients.
Right.
Again, with all those communications becomes some background, and not every conversation is how's my case. Like I might find out they have kids and say, what's going on with your kids? And I had a client a couple of weeks ago, I found out was a high school football coach. So now that starts a conversation about the game of football and so on and so forth. So you're helping people, you get to know a lot of them, and it can be very rewarding.
Yeah. Well, you can't help to make the personal connections. It's something that's as intimate or as life-changing as this. You can't help but not make a connection with those people because you care about their outcomes.
Exactly.
So maybe on the flip side of that, then biggest challenge or obstacle of the business, maybe something that you want to overcome, you want the business to overcome.
I mean, specific to Florida, there's been changes in the law that affect both property and personal injury.
That's the tort reform, right? Yeah.
Tort reform. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It got to property first, and now this year they've got to change some stuff with personal injury, and it shapes the way you do things. And, sometimes you have to say no to people that need help, but their policy isn't good, or they've changed the comparative fault standard, and, they are at fault. They weren't in the crosswalk. They weren't, they have injuries, but they're going to be at fault for a lot of what happened to them. So it's tough to say no to people. You want to help everyone, but the tort reform in Florida has definitely caused us to take a deeper dive into certain cases. You can't take.
Yeah. Change the landscape.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So if people want to learn more about you, your firm, or they want to contact you, what's the best way for them to do that, Jeremy?
Well, you can contact us on our main number. So if you just Google Schilling and Silvers, you're going to get our 954 number, which is the Fort Lauderdale area code. And you can call and ask for me. And you can speak with Donna, who's my, again, longtime legal assistant. And if I'm not around, she's going to schedule a time for us to get in touch. Our website is schillingandsilvers.com, one word, obviously. And we're on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and I believe we have a TikTok account. And you could certainly connect with us through that as well. And if you're ever in South Florida, come and say hi.
All right, cool. Yeah. Just don't come during hurricane season. Well, you can, but just watch for the forecast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in Florida too, so I'm right there with you, brother. Listen, I want to thank you for taking the time to meet with me and to do the session. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, Chris. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, and I thanks everybody for tuning in to the Confident Retirement Podcast brought to you by LPF Advisors, where we hope to raise the financial education of everyday people to a new level, one show at a time. Thanks everybody for tuning in and listening. Take care, be well, and we will see you next time.
You've been listening to the Confident Retirement Podcast with Chris and Mark from LPF Advisors. For more information on them and retiring confidently, please visit lpfadvisors.com. If your ears are pleased and your mind is now at ease, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.